The words cut through the crystal and candlelight like a blade through silk. Za he ben de hien a hiai, du booming bai, wamen, zai, shu shen mei. This stupid black girl doesn't even understand what we're saying. Marcus Chen didn't whisper it. He said it with the casual cruelty of a man who believed himself untouchable, surrounded by power, insulated by language, protected by assumption. The private dining room at Le Bernardin fell silent. 22 floors above Manhattan, with Central Park glittering like scattered diamonds below, the most important business dinner of the year had just taken a devastating turn. But Marcus Chen, CEO of Chen Dynamics and architect of the largest tech merger in Asian American history, didn't realize he had just signed his own death warrant. Standing 3 feet away, refilling crystal water glasses with practiced precision, Naomi Brooks heard every syllable, every tone, every dismissive inflection. Her hand didn't shake, her expression didn't change. But behind her calm brown eyes, something shifted. Something that had been carefully hidden for months was about to surface. Marcus didn't know that Naomi spoke 4 Chinese dialects fluently. He didn't know she had spent her childhood in Beijing, her teenage years in Taiwan, and her early 20s mastering Mandarin, Cantonese, Wu, and Hakka. He definitely didn't know that she was the adopted daughter of Vincent Chang, CEO of Pacific Innovations, the very company Marcus was desperately trying to acquire for $2.8 billion. What happened next wasn't just a business reversal. It was a complete destruction of arrogance disguised as dinner service. This is a story about power, prejudice, and the catastrophic cost of underestimating someone because of how they look. This is about a man who thought language was armor and a woman who turned it into a weapon. If you believe that respect should never be optional and that dignity matters more than deals, stay with this story. Because what Naomi Brooks did in the next 60 seconds will remind you that the most dangerous people in any room are often the ones no one bothers to see. Naomi Brooks moved through the dining room like water through glass, present, essential but invisible to the men who mattered. At 28, she carried herself with the quiet grace of someone who had learned to navigate 2 worlds, the one where she belonged and the one where she served. The private dining room at Le Bernardin was a temple to power. Mahogany panels gleamed under soft amber lighting. Crystal stemware caught and scattered light like prisms. The smell of seared foie gras and 20-year-old cognac hung in the air like expensive perfume. This wasn't just dinner. This was theater. The kind where billion-dollar futures were decided over appetizers and destroyed with dessert. At the head of the table sat Marcus Chen, 43 years old, immaculately dressed in a charcoal Armani suit that cost more than most people's cars. His black hair was swept back with surgical precision. His smile was practiced, sharp, the kind that closed deals and opened doors. He was the poster child for the American dream with an Asian face, the son of immigrants who had built a tech empire from nothing. But Naomi knew better. She had been watching Marcus Chen for 8 months, serving him at client dinners, corporate celebrations, merger announcements. She had seen the man behind the manufactured charm, the way he spoke to servers like they were furniture, the way he treated women like decorations, the way he smiled while plotting to dismantle everything her father had built. Across from Marcus sat Vincent Chang, her adoptive father, though no one in this room knew that connection. Vincent was 71, silver-haired with hands that had built circuit boards in a Taiwanese factory before building an empire in Silicon Valley. Pacific Innovations was his life's work: clean energy technology, sustainable manufacturing, ethical business practices. Everything Marcus Chen's company wasn't. Vincent had been receiving anonymous tips for months about Chen Dynamics accounting irregularities, labor violations, and environmental cover-ups. Tips that came from someone with access to insider information, someone who could move through corporate events unnoticed, someone like a high-end catering professional who worked the most exclusive business dinners in Manhattan. Tonight was supposed to be Marcus's coronation, the signing of the acquisition papers that would absorb Pacific Innovations into Chen Dynamics for $2.8 billion. Vincent would retire. Marcus would control the clean energy patents that could reshape the industry. The press release was already written. But Naomi had other plans. She approached their table with a carafe of sparkling water, her steps measured, her expression neutral. Marcus was in the middle of a story, gesturing with his wine glass, commanding the attention of every investor and board member in the room. The future belongs to those who think bigger, Marcus was saying, his voice carrying the confidence of a man who had never been told no. Sentiment is expensive. Ethics are expensive. Pacific Innovations has beautiful ideals, but ideals don't scale. We'll strip away the inefficiencies, maximize the assets, and deliver returns that actually matter. Vincent remained silent, as he had all evening. His hands were folded, his expression was unreadable. But Naomi caught the slight tightening around his eyes. Her father was hearing his life's work being described as inefficient sentiment. As she leaned forward to refill Marcus's glass, he continued without pause. Once we integrate the teams, we'll restructure completely. Clean house. Most of the legacy staff won't make the transition, obviously. But that's business. Vincent's water glass was nearly empty. Naomi moved to refill it, her hands steady, her movements practiced. But as she poured, Marcus made his fatal mistake. He turned to his CFO, David Liu, and spoke in Mandarin. Casual, dismissive, certain that no one else at the table would understand. Jai Liu to tai tianzhong. Lei to jai de wo men hu I bao liu to jai ren. He thinks we'll keep his people. David chuckled. Tao bu jai do bu men I yu jang tan io lei jai do tan tianzi. He won't know we've already negotiated the price down until he signs. Marcus grinned. Ki j neo I ning bai. Bu men zai, shu shen men. And this stupid black girl doesn't even understand what we're saying. The room didn't stop. Conversations continued. Wine poured. Silverware clinked against bone china. But for Naomi, the world crystallized into perfect, sharp focus. She finished pouring Vincent's water, set the carafe on the side table, and then, in flawless Mandarin, with the slight Beijing accent that marked her as educated, cultured, and completely fluent, she spoke. Wo wang quan ming bai, ning jai gang kai shu jai mei yu kua. I understand every single word you just said. Marcus Chen froze. His wine glass stopped halfway to his lips. Every conversation at the table died simultaneously, as if someone had pulled a plug on the entire room. Naomi looked directly into Marcus's eyes, her voice calm, clear, and devastating. Nin jai de yu ten bu dane su, imai jai CFO. Nin men ji, tiben. You thought I couldn't understand, so you told your CFO you planned to cheat my father, gut his company, and fire everyone. The color drained from Marcus's face like water from a broken glass. Vincent looked up slowly, his expression shifting from confusion to realization to something much more dangerous: clarity. Naomi straightened, no longer just a server, no longer invisible. Ku, Qianzai, Yao, Qianzai, Qianzai. And now I'm going to tell you the truth. The first shocking turn had arrived, and Marcus Chen's $2.8 billion empire was about to crumble in 4 languages. The silence stretched across the private dining room like a taut wire, vibrating with tension and disbelief. Marcus Chen's face had gone through several shades of pale, finally settling on a sickly gray that clashed with his expensive suit. His CFO, David Liu, looked like a man who had just realized he was standing in quicksand. Vincent Chang set down his water glass with deliberate precision. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of 3 decades building an empire from nothing. Naomi, the single word held recognition, affection, and something else, permission. Marcus blinked rapidly, his brain struggling to process what was happening. You know her? Vincent's slight smile held no warmth. Marcus, I'd like you to meet my daughter, Naomi Brooks Chang. The revelation hit the table like a small explosion. Board members exchanged glances. Investors shifted in their seats. David Liu actually dropped his fork, the metallic clatter echoing in the sudden quiet. Naomi remained standing, her posture perfect, her voice steady. For the past 8 months, I've been documenting every private conversation, every closed-door meeting, every confidential discussion you've had about acquiring Pacific Innovations. Marcus found his voice, though it came out strained. That's impossible. Industrial espionage. Illegal. Serving dinner isn't espionage, Naomi replied calmly. And speaking the language you assumed I couldn't understand isn't illegal. It's just good listening. She reached into her server's apron and pulled out a small digital recorder. The device was no bigger than a smartphone, but it might as well have been a nuclear weapon for the effect it had on the room. Shi Jue de Dui Hua. 10 months of conversations, she said in Mandarin, before switching to English. Every racist joke, every plan to strip Pacific's patents and sell them to overseas manufacturers, every scheme to fire American workers and move production to your factories in Vietnam, where labor violations aren't just overlooked, they're part of the business model. Marcus stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the hardwood floor. Vincent, you can't seriously be listening to this. She's clearly unstable. This is some kind of setup. Sit down, Marcus. Vincent's voice carried the kind of authority that had built boardrooms and toppled competitors. Let her finish. Naomi continued, her voice never rising, never wavering. 3 weeks ago, you told David that Pacific's environmental compliance was expensive virtue signaling that you'd eliminate within 6 months of acquisition. You called our renewable energy research feel-good garbage and said you'd sell the patents to the highest bidder regardless of how they'd be used. David Liu had gone completely pale. Marcus, we need to. Shut up. Marcus hissed, then immediately regretted letting his composure crack publicly. But Naomi wasn't done. 2 months ago you laughed about planning to close our Pittsburgh facility the day after acquisition. 1,500 American jobs you called redundant overhead. You said the media would forget about it within a news cycle. She turned to address the entire table now, her voice carrying to every investor, every board member, every witness. But what you said tonight crossed a line that wasn't about business. It was personal, it was racist, and it was recorded. Marcus's jaw tightened. Even if any of this were true, which I'm not admitting, business conversations are privileged. You can't. Actually, I can. Naomi's voice cut through his bluster like a blade. because 3 of those conversations took place in the presence of SEC investigators conducting a routine compliance review. Conversations you thought were private because you were speaking Mandarin. Conversations that are now part of an official federal investigation. The room went dead silent. Vincent leaned forward slightly. "Marcus, did you really think you were the only one who spoke Chinese in this industry?" Marcus's hands were shaking now, not with fear, but with rage. The kind of rage that comes from being outsmarted by someone you dismissed as beneath notice. This is extortion, blackmail. You orchestrated this entire thing. "No," Naomi said quietly. "You orchestrated this. Every word, every plan, every racist assumption. I just made sure the right people heard it." She looked around the table, meeting the eyes of every investor, every board member. Chen Dynamics isn't acquiring Pacific innovations to innovate, or create jobs or build a sustainable future. They're planning to cannibalize everything my father built, steal the intellectual property, and sell it piece by piece to the highest bidder. And they thought they could do it because they assumed no one was listening. Marcus's CFO stood up, his face flushed. "This is insane. Vincent, you can't seriously be considering." "I'm not considering anything," Vincent interrupted. "I'm watching my daughter dismantle a company that tried to destroy mine using their own words against them." Naomi reached into her apron again and pulled out a thick manila folder. Financial records showing Chen Dynamics' actual debt-to-revenue ratio, environmental compliance violations in 6 states, labor disputes in 12 countries, and communications with overseas buyers already negotiating for Pacific's patents before the acquisition was even finalized. She placed the folder on the table. "The SEC has copies. The EPA has copies. The Department of Labor has copies. And as of tonight, so does the press." Marcus lunged forward, reaching for the folder, but Vincent's voice stopped him cold. "Touch that table again, and security will escort you out." The billionaire CEO of Chen Dynamics stood frozen, his empire crumbling around him in real time, brought down by the woman he'd called too stupid to understand his language. But Naomi wasn't finished. The real devastation was still coming. Marcus Chen's breathing had become audible, short, sharp bursts that spoke of a man watching his world collapse in real time. The other diners, board members, investors, executives, sat frozen like witnesses to a car crash, unable to look away from the destruction unfolding before them. Naomi opened the manila folder with deliberate care. Inside were documents that would reshape the entire tech industry. Not just copies, originals. Signed contracts. Authenticated communications. The kind of evidence that ended careers and started federal investigations. "The Chenzhou factory incident," she said, pulling out the first document. "March 15th of this year. Chemical waste from Chen Dynamics manufacturing facility contaminated the water supply for 12 villages in rural China. 47 people hospitalized. The Chinese government demanded immediate remediation." Marcus's voice came out strangled. "That was an isolated incident. We followed all protocols." Naomi held up a document with his signature clearly visible. "This is your personal authorization to pay local officials to classify the incident as equipment malfunction instead of environmental negligence. The difference in fines was $847 million. She placed the document on the table where everyone could see Marcus's signature. "You chose to bribe officials rather than clean up the contamination." Vincent's expression had gone stone cold. "Children drinking poisoned water, and you called it a line item." "Business is business," Marcus snapped, his composure finally shattering completely. You think your company doesn't make compromises. You think your precious ethics actually matter in the real world. Let's find out, Naomi said quietly. She pulled out her phone and placed it on the table. The screen showed an active recording app that had been running for the entire dinner. Everything you've said tonight in English and Mandarin is being transmitted in real time to 3 locations: the FBI's White-Collar Crime Division, the SEC's Enforcement Bureau, and the New York Times business desk. Marcus's face went from gray to white. You can't. That's entrapment. No, Vincent said, standing slowly. That's accountability. Naomi continued pulling documents from the folder. The Vietnam facility contracts. Workers paid below subsistence wages. Safety equipment marked as optional cost reduction. Children as young as 14 in your supply chain, which you knew about because you personally approved the cost savings. Each document hit the table like a small bomb. The patent theft agreements. Contracts to sell Pacific Innovations' renewable energy technology to coal companies who planned to bury it permanently. The environmental research you planned to classify and destroy. Marcus was backing toward the door now, but Naomi's voice followed him, and the racism, the constant racism. Every comment about lazy American workers and bleeding heart liberals and diversity hire incompetence. All of it recorded, all of it documented, all of it about to go public. Stop, Marcus said, his voice barely above a whisper. Just stop. But Vincent had stood up, and when he spoke, his voice carried 3 decades of controlled fury. You called my daughter stupid because she's black. You called my company naive because we care about our workers. You called our environmental standards expensive virtue signaling. He walked around the table slowly, deliberately. But you made one crucial mistake, Marcus. You assumed that someone who serves dinner couldn't possibly be smart enough to destroy you. Naomi's phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen and smiled for the first time all evening. The Times just published the story. Chen Dynamics CEO caught in $2.8 billion fraud and environmental cover-up scheme. It's already trending. Marcus grabbed for his own phone, his hands shaking as he scrolled through notifications. Stock alerts, board meeting emergency calls, media requests, legal department crisis messages. This isn't over, he said, his voice thick with desperation and rage. I'll sue, I'll destroy you. Both of you. Vincent's smile was cold as winter steel. With what money? Check your stock price. Marcus looked at his phone screen. Chen Dynamics had lost 67% of its market value in the past 40 minutes. Trading had been suspended. The SEC had issued a statement about an ongoing investigation, but Naomi had saved the worst for last. She pulled out a final document. This one was different, older, more official. Marcus, do you remember signing a personal guarantee for Chen Dynamics acquisition loans? The ones you used to finance this deal? His face went blank. When your stock becomes worthless and the banks call those loans due, you'll be personally liable for $4.2 billion, plus legal fees. She placed the document on the table. You're not just losing the deal, Marcus. You're losing everything. The room was dead silent, except for the soft jazz playing through hidden speakers and the distant sounds of Manhattan traffic 22 floors below. Marcus Chen, the billionaire CEO who had walked into this room believing he was untouchable, stood broken and bankrupt, destroyed by the woman he had dismissed as too stupid to matter. But the real twist was still coming. If you believe that integrity matters more than profit, and that respect should never be optional, hit that comment button below. Tell us about a time when someone underestimated you because of how you looked. Because this story is just getting started, And what happens next will remind you that the most dangerous people in any room are often the ones no one bothers to see. Marcus Chen's phone hadn't stopped buzzing. Each notification was another nail in his professional coffin. His board of directors had called an emergency meeting. His legal team was demanding immediate crisis management. 3 major investors had already filed lawsuits. The FBI had issued a statement confirming an ongoing investigation into significant financial irregularities at Chen Dynamics. But Marcus wasn't finished. Cornered animals are the most dangerous, and billionaires with nothing left to lose operate by different rules entirely. "You think you've won," he said, his voice low and venomous. "You think exposing me makes you some kind of hero." He straightened his tie, smoothed his hair, and suddenly the panic was gone, replaced by something colder, more calculating. The kind of calm that comes from deciding to burn everything down rather than lose alone. "Naomi, is it?" Marcus smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "That's a beautiful name. Japanese origin. How fitting for someone who's about to learn what real power looks like." Vincent stepped closer to his daughter, but Marcus held up a hand. "Oh, Vincent, you'll want to hear this, because what I'm about to say will change how you see your precious adopted daughter forever." Naomi's expression didn't change, but something flickered behind her eyes, a shadow of uncertainty. Marcus pulled out his phone and began scrolling through screens with practiced efficiency. "You see, when someone spends 8 months infiltrating my business dinners, documenting my conversations, building a case against my company, I tend to investigate them back." He found what he was looking for and turned the phone screen toward Vincent. "Take a look at this, Vincent. Really look." On the screen was a bank statement. Naomi's bank statement, showing regular deposits from an account registered to Chen Dynamics. "Your daughter," Marcus said, savoring each word, "has been on my payroll for 14 months. The blood drained from Vincent's face. $25,000 a month, Marcus continued. "Officially listed as cultural consulting services. But we both know what she was really being paid for." Naomi's voice came out steady, but quiet. "Dad, I can explain. Can you?" Marcus's voice was gaining strength, feeding off the confusion and hurt he saw in Vincent's eyes. "Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you've been playing both sides of this deal from the beginning." He swiped to another screen. "Here's the beautiful part, Vincent. Every recording she made, every document she copied, every conversation she monitored, it's all inadmissible in court because she was acting as a paid agent of Chen Dynamics the entire time." Vincent looked at his daughter, and for the first time all evening, Naomi looked vulnerable. "Dad, it's not what it looks like, isn't it?" Marcus was in full attack mode now. "Let me paint you a picture, Vincent. Your adopted daughter approaches me 14 months ago, offers to provide inside information about Pacific Innovations in exchange for payment. She gets hired by the catering company that handles your events. She starts feeding me intelligence about your company's vulnerabilities, your financial position, your strategic plans." The room was spinning for Vincent. Everything he thought he knew was crumbling. Marcus wasn't done. "The best part, she convinced you to bring those documents tonight, to confront me publicly, to create a scene that would tank my stock price and give you negotiating leverage. Except now that the truth is out, those same documents prove that Pacific Innovations has been collaborating with corporate espionage." He turned to Naomi with mock admiration. "You played your own father, sweetheart. Got him to trust you while you were selling him out. That takes real skill." Vincent's voice came out broken. "Naomi, tell me this isn't true." Naomi looked at her father, the man who had adopted her when she was 7 years old, who had paid for her education, who had loved her unconditionally. The man whose trust she had just shattered in front of a room full of witnesses. "Dad, she started, then stopped. Because, how do you explain that? Sometimes the only way to destroy a monster is to get close enough to feed it." Marcus sensed victory. "The SEC investigation you mentioned. It's going to find that Pacific Innovations was feeding confidential information to Chen Dynamics through a paid intermediary. That's corporate espionage, Vincent. Federal crime. Prison time." He pocketed his phone. "Your daughter didn't just record me planning to destroy your company. She helped me do it. And now she's handed me evidence of your complicity." Vincent sat down heavily, looking older than his 71 years. "$25,000 a month," he whispered. All this time, Naomi's composure finally cracked. "Dad, please, let me explain. It's not what he's saying. I can prove." "Prove what?" Marcus laughed. "That you weren't taking my money. The bank records are right there. That you weren't feeding me information. I have recordings of our meetings. That you weren't setting up your own father. We're sitting in the aftermath of your betrayal right now." The other executives at the table looked uncomfortable, like witnesses to a family dissolution they had no business seeing. Some were quietly gathering their things, clearly wanting to distance themselves from what was rapidly becoming a criminal conspiracy. Marcus adjusted his cufflinks, his confidence fully restored. "So here's what's going to happen. Vincent, you're going to sell Pacific Innovations to Chen Dynamics at the original terms. No renegotiation, no additional oversight. Because if you don't, I'm going to make sure that both you and your daughter face federal charges for corporate espionage." He smiled. "And Naomi, you're going to disappear. Quietly. Because if you ever surface again, if you ever try to work in tech or finance or any industry where I have influence, I will make sure everyone knows exactly what kind of person you really are." Vincent couldn't look at his daughter. "How long?" he asked quietly. "Dad, how long have you been taking his money?" Naomi's voice was barely audible. 14 months. The room fell silent except for the sound of Vincent's heart breaking. Marcus Chen had just played his final card. Vincent had just played his final card. And it looked like he had won after all. But the most dangerous part of any con is when the mark thinks they've figured it out. Because that's when they stop paying attention to what's really happening. And Naomi Brooks had been playing a much longer game than anyone realized. Vincent Chang sat in silence for what felt like an eternity. His hands were folded on the table, his breathing steady, but his eyes held the weight of a man processing betrayal from the person he loved most in the world. Marcus Chen straightened his jacket, savoring what he believed was his complete victory. "Vincent, I'll need your answer. The original deal, no modifications or federal charges for both of you." The silence stretched until it became uncomfortable for everyone in the room. Board members shifted in their seats. Investors checked their phones. The tension was suffocating. Finally, Vincent looked up at his daughter. "Naomi," he said quietly, "I need to understand something." She met his eyes, and he saw something there he hadn't expected. Not shame, not guilt, but sadness. Deep, profound sadness. "Dad," she said softly, "what's the first thing you taught me about chess?" Vincent blinked. "I what?" "When I was 8 years old, what's the first lesson you taught me about chess?" Marcus rolled his eyes. "This is touching. But the best way to win," Vincent said slowly, remembering, "is to let your opponent think they're winning until it's too late to save themselves." Naomi smiled, not triumphantly, sadly. "And what did you teach me about business?" Vincent's expression began to change. But the most dangerous deals are the ones where everyone gets what they think they want. She reached into her apron one final time and pulled out a second phone. This one was different, older, more sophisticated. Government issue. Marcus, she said, turning to face him. You're absolutely right. I have been taking your money for 14 months. $25,000 a month. $350,000 total. Marcus's confidence faltered slightly. Something in her tone didn't match the victory he expected to hear. But you made one crucial mistake, Naomi continued. You assumed that money was for betraying my father. She pressed a button on the government phone. Immediately, the device connected to speakers hidden throughout the restaurant. A voice filled the room, clear, official, unmistakably federal. Agent Brooks, this is Control. You are authorized to break cover. The operation is complete. The room went dead silent. Naomi looked directly at Marcus. FBI Special Agent Naomi Brooks Chang, Deep Cover Financial Crimes Division, badge number 2847. Marcus's face went through several expressions in rapid succession. Confusion, disbelief, recognition, terror. For the past 14 months, Naomi continued, I've been running a federal sting operation investigating Chen Dynamics for money laundering, environmental crimes, and conspiracy to commit fraud. The payments you made to me weren't bribes. They were evidence. She turned to Vincent. Dad, I'm sorry I couldn't tell you, but we needed Marcus to believe he had leverage over Pacific Innovations. We needed him to feel safe enough to incriminate himself completely. Vincent's expression shifted from heartbreak to amazement to pride. The documents, the recordings, all of it, all admissible, all obtained legally under federal investigation authority, all authentic evidence of crimes that Marcus committed willingly because he thought he was protected. Marcus was backing toward the door again, but this time federal agents were entering the restaurant. 3 of them professionally dressed, moving with quiet efficiency. Marcus Chen, the lead agent said, You're under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud, money laundering, environmental crimes, and violations of the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act. As the handcuffs clicked into place, Marcus looked at Naomi with pure hatred. You played me. No, she said quietly. You played yourself. I just gave you enough rope. The agents began reading him his rights, but Naomi wasn't done. The $2.8 billion deal you wanted so badly, it was never real. Pacific Innovations was never for sale. We created the entire acquisition scenario to give you opportunities to commit federal crimes while we recorded everything. Vincent stood and walked to his daughter. How long have you been FBI? 6 years. Financial crimes specialist. Asian language speaker. This was my biggest case. He embraced her and she could feel his relief, his pride, his love. I should have known. You were always too smart to be just a waitress. Marcus, now in handcuffs, turned back one final time. This won't stick. I have the best lawyers money can buy. Naomi's voice followed him as the agents escorted him out. Had Marcus. Past tense. Check your accounts. Asset forfeiture went into effect the moment you were arrested. The private dining room emptied quickly after that. Board members, investors, executives, all of them eager to distance themselves from the radioactive fallout of Marcus Chen's arrest. Within an hour, the restaurant was quiet again. Vincent and Naomi sat alone at the table, surrounded by the detritus of a demolished empire. Wine glasses, documents, recording equipment, and the lingering scent of justice served cold. So Vincent said, "What happens now?" Naomi smiled. "Now Chen Dynamics gets broken up and sold for parts. The workers get their jobs protected. The environmental damage gets cleaned up. And you get to keep running Pacific Innovations exactly the way you always have. She paused. And I get to go back to being your daughter instead of Agent Brooks. Vincent raised his wine glass. To family, and to the best chess player I ever taught. As they touched glasses, Naomi looked out at the Manhattan skyline glittering below them. Somewhere out there, Marcus Chen was beginning to understand that his empire hadn't just collapsed. It had been systematically dismantled by the woman he thought was too stupid to matter. But that's what happens when you mistake silence for weakness, service for subservience, and assumptions for intelligence. Sometimes, the most dangerous person in the room is the one clearing your table. And sometimes, justice comes with a side of perfectly fluent Mandarin. 3 months later, Pacific Innovations announced the largest clean energy breakthrough in a decade. 6 months after that, Naomi Brooks Chang was promoted to Deputy Director of the FBI's Asian Financial Crimes Task Force. And Marcus Chen, he was still fighting federal charges from a prison cell, finally learning what it felt like to be underestimated, overlooked, and utterly powerless. The waitress had become the hunter. The hunter had become the prey, and the most expensive lesson in American business history had been served at exactly the right temperature. Game, set, match.